A little while ago, my husband and I decided to host a dinner at our place to share some exciting news with our families. We're expecting our first child. We've been married for 2 years now, and we found out I was pregnant just a few days before the dinner. I've known my husband for 5 years. We met through mutual friends back in college and have been together ever since. We're both 25 years old and, until recently, we worked at the same company. I left my job last year to partner up with a close friend who was starting her own business, and after discussing it, my husband agreed to support us financially while we got things up and running. It's been a year since I made the leap, and thankfully, things are going really well. So well, in fact, that now my husband is thinking about leaving his job to join us full-time. We're in a stable place financially, and it felt like the right moment to start a family even though we're still pretty young. When we saw the positive pregnancy test, we were over the moon. Without wasting any time, we made plans to invite our families over to share the news and celebrate together. My side of the family is small, just me and my parents. I don't have any siblings, but I'm really close to my mom's sister and her family, so I invited my aunt, uncle, and cousins too. They're only a few years younger than me and feel more like siblings than cousins. That's my little circle. Now, my husband's family is a bit more extended and, honestly, a lot more involved. Naturally, we invited his parents, but also his mom's brother and his family, her uncle, and even her parents. One person who wasn't going to be there was his sister. Officially, it was because she was too sick, but we all knew the truth. She's deep into her drinking habit and hasn't visited us in a long time. Ever since her divorce last year, her life's been a mess. She lost her job a few months back and moved back in with her parents, and instead of picking herself up, she just drinks and sleeps all day. So honestly, when I heard she wouldn't be coming, I was relieved. I didn't want any unnecessary drama during what was supposed to be a joyful, peaceful evening. But of course, drama found its way in, because my mother-in-law was attending. Now, my relationship with my mother-in-law isn't exactly hostile, but let's just say we're not best friends either. She has a way of being exhausting. The biggest issue is her blatant favoritism. She clearly prefers her daughter over her son, and she's been enabling her ever since the divorce, even when my husband and his dad try to push back. I've always stayed out of it because it's their family, not mine, and I try not to get in the middle. Initially, the plan was to keep the dinner small, just his parents and mine, but once my mother-in-law found out that my aunt and her family were coming, she pressured my husband to do things properly and invite the rest of her side too. He agreed, not because he wanted to, but to avoid an argument right before the big reveal. I wasn't thrilled with the change. I'd really wanted a more intimate moment, but I stayed quiet for the same reason. No sense in creating tension right before announcing something so special. So the invitations went out, and the night arrived. Everything was going smoothly. Right before lunch, we made the announcement. Everyone seemed genuinely thrilled. There were hugs, congratulations, happy tears. It was such a good moment. Except for my mother-in-law, who didn't even get up from her seat. She just sat there with this weird, tight-lipped smile on her face. It felt off, but we didn't let it ruin our mood. We were happy, and that was what mattered. Lunch was served, and people were loving the food. My husband and I had cooked everything ourselves. Compliments were flowing, except from one person, again. My mother-in-law stayed quiet the whole time. Then, out of nowhere, while people were chatting casually, she asked me if we were financially prepared to have a baby. She said kids are expensive and we should think it through before rushing in. The room got real awkward real fast, but I tried to play it cool. I told her the business my friend and I started had been doing well and that we were earning enough to support a child comfortably. My husband cracked a few lighthearted jokes to ease the tension, and we moved on, or so we thought. But she wasn't finished. Next, she asked me how much I was actually making each month. That caught me off guard. I'm not against talking about money when it's appropriate, but this was not the right time or place. And I couldn't figure out why she kept pushing the issue. I told her politely that I wasn't comfortable sharing those details in front of the whole family, but if she was that concerned, we could talk privately later. Then, completely out of nowhere, she brought up a phone call from a few weeks ago and used it to corner me. About 3 weeks earlier, she had called me while my husband was out with his friends. It was unusual for her to call me directly unless it was to ask about her son, but that night she said she needed to vent. I agreed to listen, thinking it might be a chance to connect with her more. She went on for a while, mostly about her daughter, how hard it was having a grown adult to care for, especially one who refused to work or contribute financially. She talked about her daughter's drinking, her laziness, and how she was draining their savings. I listened and told her I understood, trying to be supportive. The call ended abruptly though. She suddenly said she had to go and just hung up, no goodbye. I found it strange but figured maybe she was just overwhelmed. Well, apparently that call wasn't just venting. Back at the dinner, in front of everyone, she brought it up again, only this time to accuse me. She said that during that call, I hadn't even offered to help them out financially with her daughter's situation, even though I was doing well and could supposedly afford to chip in. I was completely blindsided. My husband was stunned too. We didn't even know how to respond. She started talking about how family comes first and that I should have told my husband about the call so we could step up and support his sister. That's when she pushed it even further, asking point blank if we planned on helping out financially now. I was just about to say I was sorry I hadn't offered anything earlier, but before I could even open my mouth, my father-in-law shot up from the couch, absolutely livid. In a voice louder than I'd ever heard from him, he demanded to know when she was finally going to stop using their daughter's mess of a life to scam money out of people. The whole room fell into stunned silence. This man is calm to a fault, never raises his voice, never causes a scene. So when he did, we all knew something serious was going on. The tension was thick, and we were all left confused until my mother-in-law exploded. She snapped back at him, accused him of disrespecting her in front of everyone, and then stormed out of the house without another word. My father-in-law, on the other hand, stayed put, and what he said next dropped jaws. Turns out, the phone call I got from her weeks ago wasn't a one-off. She had been calling up a bunch of friends and relatives, repeating the same sob story about her daughter being unemployed, depressed, and drinking herself into a hole. Just like she had done with me. But unlike me, many people actually fell for it and sent money that went straight into my sister-in-law's hands. And it wasn't used for any kind of recovery. Nope. She spent it all on alcohol, not rehab, not therapy, not even basic needs. Apparently, my mother-in-law had been milking everyone's sympathy, claiming she and her husband were strapped for cash and needed help dealing with their troubled daughter. But in truth, it was all just a scheme to avoid spending her own money while still enabling her daughter's downward spiral. She never pushed her to get a job or help herself. This little scam was working well for her because most of the people she reached out to were close friends or family who genuinely cared, and many of them were right there at our dinner party, now sitting in stunned disbelief. The whole house was dead silent as he told us this. It turns out the tipping point came when she tried the same stunt on her husband's sister, who immediately saw through the manipulation. She called my father-in-law as soon as she got off the phone and filled him in on everything. That led to a major blowout between him and my mother-in-law just 3 days before our dinner. He was disgusted, not just with what she was doing, but with how low she was willing to stoop. She had access to money. He was still working as a dental surgeon, and she had only recently retired from a top HR position. They weren't broke. In fact, they could afford to send their daughter to a top-tier rehab facility if they really wanted to help. But instead, she'd been lying and taking handouts under false pretenses, just to protect her own savings. They hadn't spoken since the argument, but they'd agreed to show up together in fake civility for the sake of our celebration. Clearly, that plan had failed miserably. My father-in-law apologized to all of us for how everything turned out, said he didn't mean to ruin our day, and then left quietly. Everyone else followed shortly after, still trying to process what had just happened. Eventually, it was just me and my husband left in the living room. He was fuming. He had no idea his mom had been doing this behind our backs, and he felt betrayed. I was honestly relieved I hadn't picked up on her hints during that phone call weeks ago, because if I had offered money out of sympathy, it would have just gone toward fueling her daughter's addiction. It would have been a total waste. Even though the night had taken such a sour turn, we decided not to let it completely ruin the moment. So we grabbed a tub of vanilla ice cream and curled up on the couch with a movie to try and lift our spirits. Around 10 p.m., my husband got up to brush his teeth, but I was still working on my second bowl of ice cream. I like to let it melt a bit before digging in, just a personal quirk. That's when I heard a knock at the front door. When I opened it, I found my mother-in-law standing there, her face twisted with rage. The second she saw me, she started yelling, "No hello, no explanation, just full-blown screaming." According to her, I was the reason her marriage had fallen apart. She claimed that her husband of over 30 years had officially left her and was now planning to file for divorce, and for some absurd reason, she was blaming it all on me. My husband was still in the bathroom, far enough away that he couldn't hear what was happening at the door, so I was dealing with her alone. I tried to calm her down, told her I had nothing to do with any of this. I hadn't even said anything during the party. I was literally about to apologize when her husband jumped in earlier. I told her I understood that she was upset, but none of this was my doing. She didn't care. She didn't want logic, or compassion, or reason. Instead, she looked me dead in the eye and said she hoped something awful happened to my baby, my unborn child, so I could finally understand what it felt like to be a struggling mother. I snapped. I don't even remember thinking, my brain just went blank. I didn't have anything in my hands except the bowl of half-melted vanilla ice cream, and before I could stop myself, I flung it right at her. The whole bowl full of sticky, soupy ice cream splattered across her face and down the front of her dress. I didn't throw the actual bowl, thankfully, but the mess was enough to make her freeze in shock. I couldn't believe she'd said that about my baby. There's a line you don't cross, and she stomped all over it. Honestly, the second that melted ice cream left my hand and splattered across her, I knew I was probably going to regret it. She started wailing like I'd shot her with a paintball gun or something, making a scene so loud it could have woken the dead. My husband rushed out of the bathroom in a panic, clearly thinking something serious had gone down. When he saw his mom dripping with vanilla ice cream and yelling every curse word she could dig out of her vocabulary, he didn't even flinch. He just grabbed a towel and asked me to help him find some wipes. We handed them to her while she kept screaming, calling me all kinds of names I won't even repeat. I honestly thought she was being way too dramatic for someone who had just gotten hit with dessert. Eventually, after cooling off just enough to speak without screaming, she told me to go to hell, angrily booked a cab, and stormed off into the night. It was only once she was gone that I had a chance to explain to my husband what really happened. After hearing the full story, he actually started laughing. He thought the whole thing was ridiculous and kind of deserved. According to him, I shouldn't have even helped clean her up after what she said. He told me that what his mother said about our baby was so cruel, it was a miracle I didn't throw the entire bowl at her instead of just the ice cream. He tried to brush it off like it was no big deal, but I couldn't shake it. I'm not someone who snaps like that. I don't lose control. I felt ashamed, not because I didn't have a reason, but because it was so out of character for me. I even talked to my parents about it afterward, and they were sympathetic but firm. They said while they understood my reaction, it could have been dangerous if I'd thrown the actual bowl, it could have seriously hurt her. So now I'm stuck with this question in my head: should I apologize? Or did she cross such a line that I was justified in reacting the way I did? Update 1. Hi again, thanks to everyone who shared their thoughts on my original post. It's been a week since the ice cream explosion, and I was this close to calling my mother-in-law to apologize, despite what everyone had said in the comments. But I'm glad I didn't, because she showed me exactly why she didn't deserve any apology at all. Late last night, I got a video message from her. It wasn't just her either, her daughter, my sister-in-law, was with her. Both of them were clearly drunk. I mean, clearly. Slurring, giggling, stumbling all over the place, and yelling vile things into the camera. And I'm not just talking about generic insults. The stuff they said about me, my husband, my parents, and even my unborn baby was absolutely disgusting. I won't repeat the details, because frankly, no one should have to read words like that. But trust me when I say they went as low as humanly possible. Things you don't say to your worst enemy, let alone your pregnant daughter-in-law. My husband saw the video and was so furious he wanted to call the police and report them for harassment. I talked him down because I didn't want to escalate things further. I'm already juggling pregnancy and work, and I don't have the emotional energy to fight a legal war with two drunk women who have nothing better to do. The next day, we showed the video to my father-in-law. He had moved out of their house the day after the ice cream incident and had been staying at his brother's place since then. When he saw the video, his face crumbled. He apologized over and over again, said he was ashamed, heartbroken, and completely humiliated. It was hard to watch. This man has been a real father figure to me, and seeing him break down like that made me tear up too. My husband was silent through most of the visit. He doesn't really show his emotions, but I know him well enough to know he was holding a lot in. He's the kind of guy who'll keep it together for everyone else and cry alone when no one's watching. And honestly, I just hope he's not bottling it up too much. We visited my father-in-law that night to help him finalize his divorce plans. He had already talked to a few lawyers, but we connected him with one of our close friends, a solid attorney who specializes in divorce and prenups. Considering he'd been married for over 30 years, we knew this wasn't going to be a quick or easy process. We wanted him to have the best advice possible, especially since things could get messy if my mother-in-law decided to fight back. Given everything she and her daughter had done, we were ready to support him fully. The man deserved peace after the chaos he'd been through. Update 2. Hey again, just a quick update. Last week, my father-in-law officially filed for divorce. This week, as expected, my mother-in-law completely lost it. She's now doing everything she can to stop him from leaving. She even showed up at his brother's house, where he's been staying, to confront him in person. She's been trying everything she can think of to win him back, arguing, begging, playing the victim, but honestly, I have no idea why she thought that kind of approach would work. At one point, she even reached out to me and tried to apologize, probably thinking that earning my forgiveness would somehow help her get back in his good graces. But it didn't. I told her straight up I forgave her for what she said, because holding on to that anger wasn't healthy for me or the baby, but I had no interest in maintaining any contact with her. And as far as fixing her marriage? That was never my responsibility. Her husband made the decision to leave all on his own, and I wasn't part of it. I explained that to her the first time, and I honestly couldn't believe I had to explain it again. She's been on a full-blown apology tour since then, reaching out to every single person she borrowed money from. Most of them had been generous enough not to demand it back when they first found out the truth, but now she's offering to pay it all back. Not because it's the right thing to do, but because she thinks it might help her patch things up with my father-in-law. I haven't seen him recently. Between work and trying to prep ahead for my doctor's appointments, my schedule's been a bit overloaded. I'm working overtime now to make sure I can take time off when I really need to. So, my husband's been the one in regular contact with his dad. According to him, there's absolutely no chance his father's going back to that marriage. Apparently, the financial manipulation and enabling their daughter's addiction was just the tip of the iceberg. Ever since filing for divorce, his dad has started opening up more about what things were really like behind closed doors. And now that I know all of it, I honestly don't know how he lasted as long as he did. That woman is toxic. Turns out, she's had a history of being dishonest when it comes to money. Early in their marriage, she racked up a significant amount of debt and hid it from him. He only found out after the fact, but instead of walking away, he helped her pay it all off and made her promise to be more transparent moving forward. They weren't financially stable back then, so at least there was some excuse. But now? Now she's just being manipulative and selfish. On top of the money stuff, there was the way she treated him. She constantly dismissed his needs, refused to hire help around the house even though they could afford it, and insisted they split the chores. But most days, she'd claim she wasn't feeling well, leaving him to do everything himself, despite his arthritis flaring up. And she wasn't kind. She rarely spoke to him with respect. She kept babying their grown daughter and feeding her addiction instead of getting her proper help, no matter how many times my father-in-law begged her to stop. Eventually, he hit his limit. And he told us plainly he was done wasting his life with a woman who treated him like a servant and never took accountability for anything. He wanted peace. Independence. His own life, separate from her. And honestly? Good for him. Update 3. Hey, everyone. Sorry I haven't posted in a while, these past couple of weeks have been a bit of a whirlwind. I had a bit of a health scare recently. My blood sugar dropped dangerously low and I ended up in the hospital. I panicked, thinking it might affect the baby or turn into some kind of complication. Thankfully, it wasn't anything too serious. My doctor said I'd just been a little too anxious and made too many changes to my diet too quickly. Lesson learned. I'm feeling much better now, both physically and mentally. Back to being healthy and hopeful. Now, I know a lot of you were asking for updates on the divorce situation, so here's where we're at. My father-in-law officially filed a few weeks ago. Since then, my mother-in-law has completely abandoned her attempts to win him back. She's not contesting the divorce anymore, which is honestly a blessing, but she's being incredibly difficult about dividing up their assets. As you'd expect from a 30-plus-year marriage, they've got a lot of shared finances and property to untangle. The biggest sticking point right now is the house. My father-in-law's suggestion is simple and fair: sell the house, split the profits. It's the same way they bought it, joint effort, joint money, so splitting it down the middle makes perfect sense. But of course, my mother-in-law wants the whole thing for herself. That's where the negotiations are stuck at the moment. I don't think she'll get her way, though, and even if she somehow does, my father-in-law will be just fine. He has enough saved up to retire comfortably and live without stress. She, on the other hand, is still on the hook to repay all the people she borrowed from, and that's her own doing. As for us, we've completely cut contact with both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. My husband made the decision on his own, and I followed suit. They haven't tried to reach out either, and honestly, I don't think they will. We've made it very clear whose side we're on. My husband has always been closer to his dad anyway, so this didn't come as a shock to anyone. At this point, we're just hoping the divorce wraps up cleanly, and we can all finally move on from this mess. Fingers crossed that in a few weeks, we'll have some good news to share and maybe, just maybe, we can get back to focusing on the baby and what really matters.